Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome. Thank you. I had a little tech glitch there, but it's Monday and we're doing my Freight Broker Bootcamp live. Glad you guys are here. Today, we're going to answer the question, what do shippers really want from freight brokers? That's what we're going to talk about today. So that's where we're at. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that. Had to close the door and there's a little echo in here for some reason. But listen, we're here. Thank you guys for being here. Here's the agenda. Hit me up in the comments with the city and state you're logging in from. I'd love to hear from you. We'll maybe give you some shout outs. Then we're going to jump into the training. We're going to talk about what shippers really want from freight brokers. And then number 3, we're going to go into live Q&A at the end. Kind of the same standard format as normal. But listen, I just wanted to give you guys a quick heads up. So glad you guys are here. I do these live trainings every Monday at noon, unless there's some sort of an issue. And they're absolutely free, right? So we got Corey Buchan from Billings, Montana, as always. We've got some other people that are jumping on live. We got Said One from Houston. We got Brittany from Medford, Oregon. Oregon, I should say, not Oregon, Oregon. And we've got other people joining. So appreciate you guys being here. Again, this is an underlying question that you as a freight broker or a freight agent really need to understand. Now, there's 2 ways you can learn this. You can learn it in advance from someone like me who's had literally thousands of clients and been fortunate to do hundreds of millions of dollars in sales as a freight broker, and I learned the hard way. Or you can learn the hard way by making mistakes and or maybe even smarter, asking your shippers what are their expectations or what are they looking for from you or what's important to them, right? So we're going to talk about some of those things. We're not going to talk about everything. I'm going to narrow it down to maybe 3 or 4, I think the top 3 things that shippers are looking for. If I asked a question, if I asked 100 people, we'd get 100 different answers, right? Or different variations of the answers. So William Peterson from Ilion, New York, Mr. Seamus from Miami, Joe Almighty from Fort Lauderdale, Shane from Richfield, Utah. Welcome, Shane, as always. Mellow Rugged Investments from Washington, D.C., Life with AS, Joplin, Missouri. Eric from Pittsburgh. Hey, welcome, Eric. How are you, buddy? New member of Bootcamp. Mohammed, new member of Bootcamp. After reading all the chapters, is there any test or certificate? Yeah, once you complete the training, you would send an email to support and we'll give you a certificate of completion. That'll show that you've completed the training, okay? So all you need to do, if you've completed Freight Broker Bootcamp, which is my startup program for people that are looking just to get started as a freight broker or freight agent, you go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com, you sign up, you get instant access, you go through the program, and then you can, if you've already done that, you can just email support and ask them for a certificate of completion, and then they'll message you back with a link to that, okay? So I hope that helps. Good question. We got Mitzi from Miami. We got Irby from Montreal, Canada. We got J49697 from South Carolina. Iju Marat from Chicago. Mohammed, everybody, thank you guys for being here. Truly appreciate it. We've got a bunch of people live, and I've got a bunch of notes. I didn't type them out today. These are handwritten, so you would never be able to read my handwriting. My handwriting is terrible. I tell everybody the most valuable class that I took in high school was typing. And I'm dead serious. It's the gift that keeps on giving. I can type probably, 50, 60 words a minute, pretty accurate. But my writing has always been atrocious. So if you tried reading my notes right now, you would literally laugh out loud. That's how bad my handwriting is. But my kids make fun of me. My wife makes fun of me. But hey, I can read it, so it is what it is. Eclectic Rose from Colorado, thank you. Tej from Toronto, thank you. All right, guys, so we got a lot of great things we're going to go over today. Let me grab a quick drink and we'll dive right in. Again, here's the agenda. We're going to jump into the training. I'm going to talk about what shippers really want from freight brokers. And then we're going to, at the end, if you guys stick around, we're going to do live Q&A. Now that live Q&A can ask any questions about starting or growing a successful freight brokerage. I will do my absolute best. If I don't have the answers, I will try to point you in the right direction because believe it or not, I don't have every answer. Okay. All right, cool. We got a bunch of people in. So let's just jump in here. Reviewing my really bad handwriting. Okay. All right. So what do shippers really want from freight brokers? Well, we've got some notes to go over here today. And again, I'm going to focus in on the top 3 things. There are many, and the list is long, but the top 3 things, the most important things that I believe that shippers want from freight brokers and freight agents. So we're going to go over that. But it may not be all of the things that you're thinking. You know, it's not necessarily the cheapest rates, right? It's not necessarily the best price. I know that was probably one of the first things that comes to mind, but that's really not the case. You know, shippers are not just looking for anybody to move their loads. They're looking for somebody that fits their model, fits their culture, fits their specific needs. And some of those needs we're going to go over today. Again, I'm going to give you 3 of the top. And if you stick around, I'm going to give you a 4th, okay, a bonus. I'll give you a 4th if you stick around for the end. And this bonus one is something that nobody talks about, nobody thinks about, and is really, really important if you truly want to be successful in your niche, okay? All right, so number 1, accuracy. These 3 that I'm going to give you, actually the 4 I'm going to give you, the bonus, all start with the letter A, so it should be easy for you to understand, all right? Easy for you to remember. Number 1 is accuracy. Now, what do I mean by accuracy? Accuracy is, you know, they want a reliable and consistent service, right? They want on-time service, right? So they want accuracy. They want you to do your job accurately. That requires you to have accuracy in your communications and accuracy in your execution. Let me give you an example of failing to have accuracy in your communications. Shipper contacts you, gives you a load, and they give you say some details of the load, but you don't follow up with questions. For example, if it's a LTL shipment and you're going to run it on a common carrier, they give you city to city, but they don't give you zip to zip, and you don't ask for that zip to zip, it's going to be an issue. It's going to be a problem, right? So the devil's in the details. So communications sometimes requires you to ask additional questions to make sure of your accuracy, to make sure that it's clear exactly what their expectations are. So that's just one simple example, right? Accuracy and execution, right? Making sure that you rated it properly, making sure that you understand the capacity that's out there, making sure you understand the requirements of the type of equipment and the insurance, making sure that you're vetting these carriers properly to ensure that they're going to get a high level of service and that there's no liability there, right? And that the load's not going to get dropped or stolen or double brokered, right? So accuracy is really, really important. And that's number 1 on the list, okay? Number 2, this should go without saying, but accessibility. Now, accessibility is the shipper's ability to communicate with you quickly and effectively through phone or through email or through text in an effort to try to get updates and to be able to solve problems on the fly, right? For example, maybe they're looking for updates on a shipment. Maybe they're looking for a quote on a lane or a live shipment. Accessibility is really important because what happens is during the business day, right? Let's call it 8 to 4, 8 to 5, normal business day. Most brokers are accessible. Maybe they don't check their email quite as often. Maybe they're not quite as responsive on rates, but usually accessibility is not the issue. The real problem with accessibility in the freight brokerage business is after 9 to 5, right? After hours. So shippers are going to expect you to be accessible after hours. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to have to work 24 hours a day. That doesn't mean that you're going to have calls every single day after hours, but it does mean that if the shipper needs something after hours, they expect you to be to be able to reach you either through text or phone or email so that you can give them some sort of an update, or maybe you need to give them a quote on a live load, or maybe there's some sort of emergency that they need to get in touch with you. And if you shut your phone off at 5 o'clock and you don't turn it back on until you get into the office in the morning, that's an issue, right? So that's why accessibility is so crucially important. All right. That's number 2. And again, stick around to the end because I'm going to give you a bonus, and it's something that I don't think most people think about, right? The next one, number 3, is accountability. So this should go without saying in every industry, but in the freight industry, what I find is that a lot of brokers and a lot of carriers and a lot of dispatchers like to point fingers, right? They like to point fingers at everybody else but themselves. What does a shipper really want? A shipper wants somebody that is willing to own their mistakes, is willing to take ownership of the situation, right? Accountability. They want you to be honest. They want you to be transparent. And they want you to be, again, take ownership of that situation and then be able to clearly communicate the solution and then execute. Right? Act quickly and then execute to fix the issue or the problem, right? So that's why accountability is so critical, right? That's the reason. Now, I've given you 3, but again, stick around for the bonus. Number 1 is accuracy. Number 2 is accessibility. Number 3 is accountability. Now, can you guess what number 4 is? Hit me up in the comments and let me know if you can guess number 4. Here, I'll spoil it for you. We'll save you some time. Number 4, the bonus is, drum roll please, authority. Now, let me explain to you what I mean by authority. You notice I did the 4 A's there, right? It took me a while to figure that out. But ultimately, authority. Shippers don't just want anybody to move their loads. What they're looking for is they're looking for someone who has expertise in their niche, expertise in their industry, expertise in their needs, okay? So they can find any, Johnny come lately to move their freight, right? There's tons of people out there. This is the problem with generalists, right? Now, especially for freight broker startups, I'm a big fan, I'm a big believer in riches are in niches. So my suggestion is you niche down and you become an authority, you become an expert who has the ability to, to provide solutions and help them with complex problems, right? So again, that doesn't happen day one, but as time goes on, you're able to build up your authority, your expertise, your reputation, because the fact is, they're trusting you with their reputation, right? So they want to know that they can trust you. And the way that you can demonstrate that is by becoming an authority in your niche. That's number 4. That's the bonus. Listen, I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, do me a huge favor. Hit the like button. Ask me any questions in the comments below. And again, here we are. This is another Freight Broker Bootcamp Live. If you guys are looking for help on getting started as a freight broker or a freight agent, just check out freightbrokerbootcamp.com. Trained over 10,000 students. That program's been around since 2009. And we offer a 60-day, 100% unconditional money-back guarantee. All right, cool. So we're going to lead right into Q&A. All right. So if you guys have questions, whether it be about this training or freight broker startup or freight broker sales or marketing or whatever it is, hit me up in the comments. We're going to jump in. We're going to hit this. We're going to knock this out of the park. I'm going to try to do a quick Q&A. I have a laundry list of things I got to get done today, and I'm sure you do too. So hit me up quickly with the questions. Again, just know, oh, by the way, anybody who wants to hit me up in the comments here, let me know, which one do you think is most important to you? Or which one do you think is most important to shippers, more importantly? Accuracy, accessibility, accountability, authority, or maybe you've got a different one, okay? Again, there are a lot of, if I asked 100 people, we'd get a lot of different answers, right? But right now, I'm asking you. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say, and then we'll jump into Q&A. Mitzi's got a question. Is it appropriate, customary to contact shippers for business on weekends and nights? What is their accessibility for seeking their business, not following through on shipments? You know, it's a really good question, Mitzi. What I find is that most shipping managers, logistics managers, traffic managers on the shipping end, right? They're on the client end. What I find is that they do not want to be solicited after hours. Now, that's not 100% accurate, but I would say the heavy majority probably would not like to be cold called after hours. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't ways you can do it after hours, but you have to be very, very careful, right? Especially when you're talking about phone calls, right? Phone calls are probably the most obtrusive, right? So I would be more likely to send an email or a text if it's after hours than I would be to make a phone call. But this is just my personal opinion, okay? So I believe it probably could be done, but you have to soften the sell a little bit. You've got to not quite be so aggressive. All right. And I'm not a big believer in being overly aggressive on sales calls anyway, but when you're after hours, you got to be a little bit more delicate, you got to play a little bit more of the long game. You got to be a little bit more of a soft sell. So if you did decide to do it after hours, just be careful. One way to do it is to test it. I did not do a lot of after hours. Now, here's the thing. Here's the cool thing, right? We have daylight savings time. So when you're on the East Coast, at 5 o'clock on the East Coast, it's 2 o'clock on the West Coast, right? So you've got extra hours depending upon your niche, right? If you have a local niche, then that may not apply, right? But if you have a niche that's grown in geography over time, then you probably, you've got more accessibility of hours, right? So I hope that helps. That's a really interesting question. Yeah, thank you for asking. Are there any entry-level freight agent jobs? Yeah, there's tons. Now, there's two types of companies that are hiring agents. One that require a book of business, which if you're a new agent, isn't you, and another that doesn't require a book of business. Those are usually the ones that require a book of business are ones that are larger, usually more established and don't need to bring on agents with no experience because the larger companies, the more established companies have built a product that is attractive to established agents. The other side of it is smaller companies that are doing $1 million and $3 million and $5 million and $10 million in sales are looking to grow aggressively, right? Who don't quite have that product or brand or reputation or authority to attract established agents. So they bring on agents who don't necessarily have a book of business, okay? Or don't have a significant amount of experience. So the best place for you to go if you're a brand new agent is to focus on smaller companies, smaller brokerages, whether they be local to you or in any geography, right? That maybe have been around for a year or 2 or 3 or 4 years that are doing, again, $1 million, $3 million, $5 million, $10 million, because that's not a lot of revenue, right? And those companies, they don't have the capital to invest to pay somebody $60,000 base and all the benefits and all of that. They a lot of times don't have the capital for that, but they do have the thirst or the appetite to grow. And if you can sell your agent position, your ability to bring on clients with zero risk to them, commission only, that's a win-win for everybody. So I hope that helps. Thank you, Mitzi, for the feedback. Shane said he finds that shippers are very active on LinkedIn. LinkedIn would be another one, right? So you got text, you got email, you got LinkedIn. Those are 3 great ones after hours or weekends. You just have to be a little bit softer sell, okay? Not quite as in your face. Would you recommend addressing shippers in person instead of cold calling, especially after I've sent my email info? Yeah, I love face-to-face selling if it's viable, right? If you have a geography that is dense with shippers that are within driving distance, let's say within 50 to 100 miles, yeah, sure, absolutely. Face-to-face, nothing replaces face-to-face. But there's a couple of issues, right? You've got time, you've got money, you got resources, right? You also have, most people are much more, they're afraid to be rejected on a cold call, but they're really afraid to be rejected face to face, right? Over the phone, rejection is pretty easy. You just hang up and move on to the next one. Face to face is a little bit more difficult when you're seeing that rejection. Now, I'm a huge fan of face to face when possible, whenever possible. But again, how many people are you going to be able to actually talk to in a day when you're out there driving around in some industrial complex? Maybe, what are you going to stop in and do 10 stop-ins or 20 stop-ins a day, right? And you might be able to talk to one person, two people, right? You're going to leave your information at the front desk unless you're able to get around on the dock. So, I love face-to-face when possible, but again, the phone allows you to leverage your time. So I'm a big fan of each. In my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator coaching program, I teach a multi-touch point outreach strategy. I don't just teach phone or email or LinkedIn or face-to-face. I teach a multi-touch point outreach strategy with a sales cadence that allows you to double or triple your connection rate, your contact rate, your conversations, right? To increase the number of conversations you're having. So hope that helps. Good question. Let's see. Eric asks, is anyone seeing an increase in the market? Well, I think some people are seeing increases and some people are seeing decreases, right? The expectation is that West Coast drayage, container freight, or drayage movements are probably going to drop. Obviously, that's where all the China freight comes in from, right? So if you're leveraged heavily in West Coast drayage, you might see a drop in that, at least temporarily, until the tariffs are settled and, Trump and China, decide to make a deal. Other than that, I'm seeing some areas where we're seeing increases because what's happening is buyers are front loading their purchases before the potential of tariffs hitting. So, there's a lot of dynamics there that go into it, but I think you're going to see some markets that are down and some markets that are up. But I think this is going to be a short-term disruption no matter what. I highly doubt they're going to let this trade war and these tariffs linger for a significant amount of time, especially when you talk about, there's really only a handful of countries that we really need to worry about, right? China, India, Germany, maybe, South America, Canada, Mexico. I mean, there's a handful of countries where we get most of our imports from. So it's not like we got to go out and negotiate with hundreds of different countries out there. I'd say if I had to guess, 70+% of our imports come from probably less than 6 countries. It's probably higher than that, right? But ultimately, I hope that helps, Eric. Okay, Suflex Netneil asks, I just joined Bootcamp and I'm confused on how to get my shippers. Well, if you just joined Bootcamp, you need to go through the fundamentals, right? Bootcamp is not a sales training course. Bootcamp has some sales training built into it, right? But Bootcamp is a program that allows you to teach you, making the assumption that you know nothing about freight brokerage, you knew nothing about trucking, just like when I got started, and it's going to take you from A to Z. Okay. Now that I want to kind of set the plate for people that want to invest and enroll in the bootcamp. It's for newbies, mainly newbies to the industry who have never necessarily worked inside a freight brokerage or been a freight agent. Okay. Number two, the top 3 or 4 ways that brokers get shippers is cold calling over the phone, emailing, leveraging LinkedIn, and face-to-face, all of which require winning sales strategies. So cold call, there's different styles of cold call, right? And there's a right way and a wrong way to do cold calling. So that's the thing that you have to understand. There's no one strategy. There's no one script. There's no one way to get shippers. The overarching strategy is for you to find the right person to talk to, whoever's in your target market, whoever's the decision maker or influencer, and to start building a relationship with them, developing rapport, identifying their need, and then filling that need. So that's the overarching framework of how you do it. Some people choose to do it face to face, like we just talked about. One of the people online had a question. Some people like to use the phone because maybe they don't have a local geography where there's a lot of density of shippers, and maybe they're calling 2 or 3 or 4 states away or all the way across the country. So the phone makes a lot more sense. So I hope that helps. I mean, again, that's the reason why I put together my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator program. So Freight Broker Bootcamp is the startup program. Freight Broker Sales Accelerator is it's 8-week Freight Broker sales coaching program. And what happens in that program is I work with you to teach you my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator system, teach the entire system that I use to do over $200 million as a freight broker, my best freight broker sales strategies, tactics, tools, but most importantly, the entire system. And then for 8 weeks, I work with you to help you get your first 5 or 10 shippers and on the way to hitting 7 figures in sales, right? So the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator is something I launched several years ago. Again, it's not just an online self-paced course. It's an actual coaching program where I work with you directly to help you to hit 7 figures as fast as we can, right? So here's the thing. Spots are very limited. Matter of fact, enrollment is closed right now, but I'm hoping to open it in the very near future, maybe in the next week or two. But the only way you can get enrolled is if you're on the wait list. Okay. So if you want to get on the wait list, go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/waitlist. It costs you nothing to get on the wait list. The Sales Accelerator is not free. It's not cheap, and the price is only going to continue to go up. So my suggestion to you is get on the wait list. You'll get all the information. And then if you think it makes sense, then we'll schedule a call, because I hand select every single person that comes into this program. Okay. So that's how you get on the wait list. I hope that helps. Give me 1 second. I'm scrolling here. Shane, hey, Dennis, have you signed any clients just by talking on LinkedIn? I've never signed a client just through messaging, but what I have done is I have started a dialogue with a prospect, either through comments or a thread, that then led to a direct message through LinkedIn, which then led to a phone call, which then led to an opportunity. So I've never had a shipper, and it's going to be pretty rare, that a shipper is going to just reach out to you through LinkedIn and say, hey, here's a shipment. And if they do, the red flag should go up and the hair on the back of your neck should go up, because that's just doesn't happen very often. So I would caution you to be very careful with that type of an inquiry. Okay. You need to be able to vet them. That happens very, very rarely. But what I described to you, maybe say you commented on one of their posts, and then you started a little bit of dialogue in the thread, and then all of a sudden you converted it over into direct message through LinkedIn Messenger, and then all of a sudden you converted that over into a phone call. That's very common. That's the normal path, right? Or maybe you send a connection request, a custom connection request to someone who's a potential prospect. They go dialogue back and forth with you in Messenger, and then you eventually convert that into a phone call. That's very common. So I hope that helps. If you got a follow-up, let me know, Shane. Okay. What can you say about JB Hunt's freight agent program for people recently completed Freight Broker Bootcamp? I have not base book. Oh, you have no base or book. Okay. You have no book of business. Okay. Gotcha. Here's what I can tell you. I do not personally know the specifics of JB Hunt's freight agent program. As you can imagine, I could never keep up with all of the agent-based programs out there, because there are hundreds and hundreds. Okay. Probably thousands. But I can tell you that JB Hunt has been a well-established provider of trucking logistics, and freight brokerage services since I first started and before. I joined the industry back in 2003, so it's over 20 years. I don't have a personal relationship. I don't have a dog in the fight. They're a good, well-established brand. I don't hear a lot of negativity about them on social media, unlike a company like TQL where you hear a lot of negativity. So I would look at the merits of the business, of their agent program and base it on that. Hope that helps. Good question. Said one, how would driverless rigs possibly affect this part of the business? Well, they really wouldn't have a significant effect. They would, in a lot of ways, it would probably improve the business. Now, I know drivers don't want to hear that, but there still need to find shippers, whether there's driverless trucks or not, shippers still need brokers to source capacity. They need them to source trucks at the agreed upon rates. And then they need to help to not only manage that shipment from cradle to grave, but solve problems along the way. Just because you have a driverless vehicle doesn't mean that you're not going to have issues along the way, right? The only thing that, the driverless vehicle does is takes the human element out of it, the human error, and you would still have to be able to communicate with the trucking company as a broker to try to get updates and provide updates. You'd still have to provide those updates and solutions to any problems to shippers. So I don't see driverless vehicles having a huge impact on freight brokerage. Where I see it having a huge impact is on drivers, obviously, and dispatchers, right? So that would be the two areas where I think you'd have the potential is for the biggest impact. Okay, Matthew asks, how do you startup brokers compete to give the timely updates and track and trace, especially in the AH without setting a 2 a.m. alarm after hours? How do startup brokers compete to give timely updates? Well, it usually happens through one of two mechanisms. The mechanism is built in to the TMS, which can provide updates, okay, based upon triggers. Some TMSs are able to do that. And the second one is through the phone, okay? So it's either going to be a phone call or a text or an email, right? So it's phone, a call, a text, or an email. Now, how do brokers do it after hours? Usually what happens is the updates are usually based upon some sort of a trigger, right? Whether that be a pickup or a delivery or a check call or something specific. How brokers actually remind themselves to do these updates, I don't know. Maybe they set an alarm on their phone. Maybe they have some sort of reminder. I'm not sure. Maybe they just do it every night before they go to bed. I'm not quite sure how people do it. A lot of it is based on trigger events that happen. A driver calls you and says he's going to be delayed. So the pickup in the morning is going to be delayed by a half an hour. So you need to be able to receive those calls from carriers and drivers after hours that could have an impact on the service for the next day's pickups or deliveries. So I hope that helps. I just gave you a quick brain dump there, but yeah, I hope that helps. Mitzi says, it seems that TruckStop is the most comprehensive software available for freight brokers. Would you agree? Well, I would agree that the top two are definitely TruckStop and DAT. I can flip-flop either way on tools and effectiveness and capacity and ease of use, right? I can flip-flop back and forth. I've been using TruckStop and DAT since 2003, right? And what you have to understand is those programs have changed drastically since then, okay? And they've both gotten much, 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 much better. So, I think it really comes down to a personal preference. I don't think you can really go wrong either way. They both have very robust carrier databases and load data, rate data. They both, have tools that have really good usability. So I think it really comes down to personal preference. I do really like Truck Stop for sure, but I also like the DAT. So I hope that helps. I don't think you can go wrong either way is my answer. William, how old is the carrier and shipper database in Freightburger Bootcamp? We typically update those every 18 to 24 months, typically. I don't know the last time, it's set, in our project schedule, so I don't have it top of mind. But usually 12, 18, 24 months, we update them. So if you're a Freightburger Bootcamp student, right? If you've enrolled in Freightburger Bootcamp, what William is saying is you get access to a shipper database and a carrier database that you can search within the membership, within the program for specific, shipper niches, freight niches for specific carriers based on geography or phone number or whatever. So yeah, I hope that helps. Okay, Melody Mix, I'm going to challenge you on this. Nowadays, it's very hard to find shippers because of tariff situation. What should I do? Where should I call to find shippers most? Okay, so the tariffs, let me explain something to you, okay? There are I'm going to give you three different scenarios, three different versions. Scenario A is rates are steady, fuel is steady, there's nothing going on in the industry that is causing any sort of disruption, right? There's no tariffs, there's no hurricanes, there's no, war that's causing the price of oil to go up. There's a lot of stability and rates are very flat. Believe it or not, that is the absolute hardest time to get shippers. And the reason being is because that stability, there's that old adage, if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? When there's a lot of stability within the industry, shippers, customers have a tendency to stay put. Now, let me give you an alternate scenario. Let's say, for example, what happened after, over the last couple of years, we had a big freight boom where rates went through the roof and people made a lot of money. And then over the last couple of years, it started to dip and now it's flattened out, right? So during that dip, let's assume that we're going into a dip. What happens there? It's still a great opportunity, even though rates are going down, to get new shippers. Why? Because volatility creates opportunity. So remember, when rates go down, carriers park their trucks, carriers go out of business, and those carriers were filling a part of the need in the market. And that need that then disappears needs to be filled in, and is typically filled in by brokers. Shippers rely on brokers to source that capacity to fill that gap. So that's another example. Now, let's look at the third example. The third example is when capacity starts to get tighter and rates start to go up, which is what we're starting to see, okay, in some niches, because you have what my point is that when rates go up, when rates go down, those are the two best times to get shippers because volatility creates opportunity. When rates are steady, that's the hardest point. So what I'm saying to you is I don't think the tariff situation is going to have a long-term impact. It's probably going to be a fairly short-term disruption. And it really is mainly impacting a small number of industries. The industry, and when I say a small number of industries, it's a lot of volume, like we talked about with drayage from China. But ultimately, I think it's going to be a short-term disruption. The places that you're going to go, you're going to avoid the import market, right? Especially with China, anything that's import with China. And if you really want to focus on the least amount of disruption, is American-made, US-based companies, right? I mean, those companies are probably going to have the least amount of disruption as opposed to some of the international import stuff, right? Now, it doesn't mean, and some of those industries are going to see a big uptick. And here's why. Because if consumers can't buy a product from China, okay, let's say it's a sparkling ice beverage that was made in China, just a hypothetical, okay? They're going to find something to buy to fill that need. And if they choose an American-made alternative, then that's going to create more demand and more sales for American-made companies. I'm just giving you a simple example, right? Because this is kind of off the cuff, right? I didn't prepare for these questions, but I hope that helps a little bit. That's, again, a little bit of a brain dump for you. Okay, good question. Why is a surety bond needed and how much is it? 75K or 100K? So the freight broker surety bond requirement is currently $75,000, but that doesn't mean you have to have $75,000 in cash or assets. The broker bond is heavily based upon your personal credit. So if you have bad credit, you're either not going to get approved for a bond or you're going to have a higher bond price. If you have good credit, then you're higher likely to get approved and your bond price is going to go down, right? Bond prices typically range somewhere between, on average, somewhere between 1,000 and 5,000. If you've got bad credit, between 1,000 and maybe 4,000. And if you got bad or bruised up credit, then they can go up from there. Okay. Now, why do brokers need a bond? Well, the broker bond protects carriers, not shippers. It's not a cargo claim. It has nothing to do with freight. It has to do with the surety bond that guarantees payment to the carrier by the broker. So for example, if I'm a carrier, you're the broker, we move a shipment, and then you don't pay me, and I've been trying to reach you to get paid, and now the bill is 30 or 60 days past due and you haven't paid me, I, as the carrier, can reach out to your surety bond company and file a claim against your broker bond, and that surety bond company is going to guarantee payment to me, and then it's their responsibility to collect that from you, right? So ultimately, it's a guarantee to the carriers to get paid for the services provided in the event that a broker doesn't pay an invoice to a carrier, okay? So that's the main reason for it. Hope that helps. Good questions. Your FBBC resources page recommends Ascend TMS. Is the TMS equal to TruckStop? No, a TMS and TruckStop are different. TruckStop is a load board, okay, where carriers and brokers come together to make a match. And you can also get rate data and some other tools. A TMS is a transportation management software. It's a management software, a workflow software where brokers manage all of their customer data, all of their billing data, all of their pickup and drops, all of their load data, and they manage that in a work process that goes from A to Z. So maybe they post the load, it's an available load, then it's a covered load, then it's a dispatch load, and then it's a delivered load. So imagine a screen where you would have all those different stages in it, and that's what that software manages, okay? So, a load board is external loads and external trucks and data. A TMS is your own data, your own proprietary data, right? And is the specific data that's geared towards your shipper loads and the carriers that you've approved and vetted to do business with. So hope that helps. All right, I'm going to wrap this up here. Your video is all black. We can only hear you, not see you. I don't know. Can you guys see me? Hit me up in the comments. Let me know if you guys can see me. I didn't get any sort of an alert. Can you guys see me or only hear me? Okay. So maybe it's just an issue on your end. All right, great. Well, listen, I appreciate you guys being here. You guys had some amazing questions. Thank you so much for being here. If you guys are curious about becoming a freight broker or a freight agent, okay, and you're looking for some help, you're looking for a way, you're looking for someone to teach you from A to Z how to get started as a freight broker, freight agent, check out freightbrokerbootcamp.com. Again, we've trained over 10,000 students We offer a 60-day, 100% unconditional money-back guarantee. Can't get any better than that. You could kick the tires for 60 days. And if you're not happy, send us an email and we'll refund you. And if you're an established broker or agent and you're already, maybe you're in the startup phase, but you've already gotten your broker authority, you've already set up as an agent, and you're looking for help with getting shippers, you're looking for freight broker sales specific help, check out my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator. That's an 8-week live coaching program where I take that piece of my brain, I transplant it into your head, and I teach you my best freight broker sales strategies, tactics, tools, and best of all, my entire system that allowed me to do over $200 million as a freight broker. No seats are available right now. It's not open for enrollment. It will be soon, but the only way you'll get notified when spots open up is to get on the wait list. The wait list is free. Check it out, and I hope to see you there. You guys, thank you so much for being here. Have an awesome day. Have an awesome week, and we'll see you next week on the next Freight Broker Bootcamp Live.